Number 8. Gonzalo Lopez. In March of 2005, Gonzalo Lopez and an accomplice named only as Rick carried out a violent home invasion in Weslaco, Texas, as per the orders of their bosses with the La Mano drug cartel in Tamaulipas, Mexico. During the course of the break-in, the two men kidnapped the homeowner, identified as 37-year-old Jose Guadalupe Ramirez, who was in the midst of an ongoing dispute with the cartel. Later that night, Lopez murdered Ramirez and buried his remains in the woods. The following month, Lopez was arrested and charged with capital murder, of which he was ultimately convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment. On May the 12th of 2022, the man was one of 16 inmates on board a Texas Department of Criminal Transport bus bound for a medical appointment. While still in transit, Lopez managed to break out of his cuffs and use a sharp object to stab the driver. He then led the two corrections officers off of the bus before returning to the vehicle and driving away without them. While he was on the run, Lopez was added to Texas's 10 most wanted fugitives list. 3 weeks after his escape, the man broke into a family-owned ranch in Centerville and murdered its 66-year-old owner and 4 of his grandchildren. He then stole several firearms and fled in the victim's pickup truck. The stolen vehicle was spotted in Atascosa County later that night, and a highway police chase ensued. Lopez eventually drove the vehicle into a fence, at which point he got out and opened fire on the pursuing officers. He was gunned down in the return fire. In the aftermath, the state's Criminal Justice Department announced that it would be suspending inmate transports pending a comprehensive review of its transportation procedures. Number 7. Jessica Boomershine. In early 2020, CCTV footage from the Montgomery County Jail in Ohio captured an inmate's ill-fated escape attempt. The viral clip showed 42-year-old Jessica Boomershine mount a chair in the facility's waiting area before attempting to climb up into the ceiling. Others in the room alerted nearby guards to the situation, and a few seconds later, Boomershine burst through the ceiling after it suddenly gave way. She dangled there for a moment before a corrections officer grabbed hold of her and pulled her back down. Having previously been arrested for kidnapping and assaulting an elderly Miamisburg man, Boomershine subsequently faced additional charges of escape and vandalism. In February of 2021, the woman was sentenced to between 25 and 30 years behind bars during a hearing at Montgomery County Common Pleas Court. Number 6. Santos Samuel Fonseca and Jonathan Salazar. On November the 3rd of 2019, a pair of inmates at California's Monterey County Jail escaped and fled to Mexico. The county sheriff's office identified the fugitives as 21-year-old Santos Samuel Fonseca and 20-year-old Jonathan Salazar, both of whom had been locked up on pending murder charges in connection to separate cases. The young men had reportedly created a hole in the ceiling of a communal bathroom through which they gained access to a maintenance gap before kicking open a hatch that was obscured from view by construction crews working on jailhouse renovations. In the wake of their escape, Fonseca and Salazar ditched their prison jumpsuits and wore the street clothes they had on underneath as they crossed the U.S.-Mexico border and headed for Tijuana. Federal authorities ultimately apprehended the two escapees when they returned to the border a couple of days later in an attempt to re-enter the states. They were subsequently returned to Monterey County Jail. Fonseca and Salazar reportedly belonged to rival gangs, but had formed a partnership after being housed in the same unit of the facility. Number 5. Gallia County Jail Escape. In the early hours of September the 29th of 2019, 4 inmates at Gallia County Jail in Gallipolis, Ohio, escaped after overpowering correction officers. Bryn Martin, Christopher Clemente, Troy McDaniel Jr., and Lawrence R. Lee III reportedly accosted 2 female guards with a shank and stole the keys to one of their vehicles, which they subsequently used to make their escape. A second vehicle was waiting for the 4 men about a block from the jail and was later recovered at an undisclosed location in Pennsylvania. The North Carolina Highway Patrol alerted the police in Cary that the 4 fugitives were believed to have made their way into the area of the Red Roof Inn on Walnut Street. Upon the arrival of law enforcement, 3 of the 4 men were apprehended, while Lee III remained at large until his eventual capture in Durham. The charges levied against the escapees in question included domestic violence, assault, menacing, drug possession, burglary, and unlawful restraint, per court records. It was reported that Martin, who possessed an extensive criminal record, had previously escaped from the same jail and had thus been charged with escape earlier in the month of September. Number 4. Walker County Jail escape. 12 inmates at Walker County Jail in Jasper, Alabama, took advantage of an inexperienced employee to carry out a daring jailbreak in the summer of 2017. During a subsequent press conference, the county sheriff detailed how the prisoners had used peanut butter from jailhouse sandwiches to facilitate their plan. They reportedly changed the number over the door that accessed the outside by spreading the sticky food paste over it. A recent hire at the jail was manning the control room at the time, and when the inmates asked for that particular door to be opened, he obliged. Having been fooled by their peanut butter-fueled deception, 11 of the 12 escapees were apprehended within the first 24 hours, including the most serious offenders of the group. 24-year-old Brady Andrew Kilpatrick, who'd been in custody on drug-related charges, remained on the run for about a day before he was tracked down and rearrested in southern Martin County, Florida. Number 3. Tula Jailbreak. In the early morning hours of December the 1st of 2021, a gang of armed thugs launched a vehicle ramming attack on a pair of cars parked outside of a prison in the Mexican town of Tula de Allende. The gangsters proceeded to blow up the vehicles in an attempt to garner the attention of prison guards, who were then bombarded by a deluge of gunfire. Following additional explosions, the gang gained access to the detention facility and stormed inside. In the ensuing mayhem, a total of 9 inmates were freed, including Jose Artemio Maldonado Mia, known as El Michoacano, a local drug lord and head of the Mexican cartel known as the Pueblos Unidos. The following day, 3 of the escaped inmates and 8 of the gangsters who took part in the violent jailbreak were taken into the custody of Mexican police. As of the latest developments, the government of Hidalgo had launched a full-scale investigation aimed at tracking down the rest of the fugitives. Number 2. Ronaldo Silva. 39-year-old Ronaldo Silva walked right out of a prison in the Brazilian municipality of Penedo after dressing himself in women's clothes. The inmate, an alleged drug trafficker, had obtained the feminine disguise by way of his wife, who smuggled the clothes in during a visit before leaving in her husband's Bermuda shorts. Silva's get-up successfully fooled the prison guards, who allowed the man donning a wig, makeup, high heels, and a blue dress to exit the facility without incident. Less than an hour later, the escapee was spotted on the street by a police officer who took note of his awkward, unsteady gait. After he was returned to jail, Silva's wife admitted to having given him the clothes he used in his escape, but indicated that she didn't know why he'd wanted her to bring them. The man had been transferred to the institution in Penedo after a previous armed escape attempt that proved similarly fruitless. Number 1. Casey White. At about 9:30 a.m. on April the 29th of 2022, Casey White, who was awaiting trial in a capital murder case, was escorted to a police cruiser by Vicky White, the assistant director at the Lauderdale County Jail in Florence, Alabama. After the man got into the vehicle in handcuffs and shackles, Vicky, who had no familial relation to him, drove them away from the detention center for what she claimed was a scheduled mental health evaluation at the courthouse. Although the task of transporting inmates to such appointments would generally be performed by 2 deputies, the woman wasn't challenged, most likely due to her prestigious position at the institution. When Vicky and White never returned to the detention center, a manhunt was launched by the Lauderdale County Sheriff's Department, but soon came to involve authorities nationwide. The ensuing investigation led to the discovery that Vicky, who was supposed to retire on the day she'd left with White, had never actually finalized the paperwork. She had sold her 4-acre property for significantly less than its assessed value and purchased several items including firearms, men's clothing, and vehicles. It was subsequently determined that the assistant jail director had sparked up a romantic relationship with White, which was believed to have begun as early as 2 years prior to their escape. In early May of 2022, Vicky was terminated from her position and a warrant was issued for her arrest. On the 9th of the month, the police in Evansville, Indiana, obtained surveillance footage of the fugitives at a car wash, where they got into a Cadillac DTS. They were subsequently located at a Motel 41 in town. When law enforcement closed in on the couple, a high-speed car chase ensued on the highway, culminating in the Cadillac flipping into a ditch following a pit maneuver. White surrendered without incident, while Vicky was found suffering from a self-inflicted gunshot wound, to which she ultimately succumbed at the hospital. Although a medical examiner officially ruled that the woman had taken her own life, White faced an additional felony murder charge in connection to her death, with his trial scheduled to begin in December of 2022. Thanks for watching. Would you rather be a corrections officer at a maximum security prison or live in the middle of a war zone? Let us know in the comments section below.